Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Valeria and this is the Off-Road Range, as usual. Today I would like to talk about the information security in the network and the collection of personal data. I would like to talk about the purity and protection of your data on personal devices and about the filtered, conscious consumption of information. This is a very important topic, since the safety of your data and precious information and in general your safety and peace of mind depend on it. And the conscious consumption of information favors productive work, order and thoughts, and the development of creativity. I will tell how our data is collected and how it endangers our privacy, what open operation systems are, and that using a new OS is not as scary as it seems. I will tell you about browser settings and virtual private network (VPN), how to choose strong passwords and secure mail. I will also touch on the importance of duplicating data and the concept of backups. It took me a lot of time to structure everything I will talk about, and I realized that in addition to these topics, I can talk about a lot of other things. After several years of working with engineers, information security became not only my hobby, but an integral part of my life. And one video won't be enough to tell you how to protect yourself, because security may be provided only in a complex. After watching this video, please write in the comments the topics that will be interesting for you. In addition, I hope that I will tell in a simple and interesting way. And I will try to answer your question in the comments or in another video if you have them. I would like to tell why security, online anonymity and data privacy are important, and why it doesn't mean that the one who cares about it is a scammer or an attacker. There are important reasons to think about information security. I will give you some facts, and I hope that you will decide to learn and to put into the practice at least the basics of information security. Anonymity makes it impossible for data to be stolen, since little is known about you. Anonymity prevents data leaks, since you store your data in secure locations. Anonymity allows you to get and to study the information you want to get, and not the information that imposed on you by those who have power. And accordingly, it allows you to have the freedom of thought, see different problems and different points of view, analyze and understand how you really think. Of course, it is wise to block really dangerous sites, but beyond, many countries block sites that allow people to communicate free, get different points of view, learn new information and express their opinions. In general, that are those things the internet and web forums were originally created for. For example, in some countries, the websites of international human rights organizations, popular messengers, opposite resources, the sites of minorities are blocked. In some countries, women are not considered full-fledged members of society and are not allowed to express their opinions for one reason or another. Restrictions are also a tool of pressure, since for publishing incorrect materials, an internet source can be blocked and the owner will lose audience and income. If we talk about the collection of personal data, then in modern times absolutely all possible information is collected from us. Our age, weight, height, biometric data, residential address, our salary, bonuses, coupons, gifts, discounts, spendings, purchases, our loans, terms and amounts of payments. Our purchases, from lollipop to apartments. What kind of cheese we eat, whether we like sweets or not. What kind of shampoo we wash our hair. What food we buy for a cat. What color we buy clothes. Absolutely all transactions in all places. All our medical data, all diseases, blood tests and statistics, injuries suffered and their severity, operations and recovery time, drugs, their quantity, dosages and cost, duration of the female cycle or its absence, our relatives, friends, all the environment we communicate with. It is tapped or not tapped until we mention something the program or the device reacts to and the conversation recording starts. Of course, finances, medical indications, and our loved ones can become a tool of pressure for us, not only from scammers. Our locations attract as well. Our favorite places: theaters, restaurants, cafes, parks, how often we visit relatives, what trips we go on, where we order most often, what musician concerts we visit, how often we buy coffee on the way to work, how long we walk in the park. GPS navigation, Wi-Fi hotspots, Bluetooth sensors, and facial recognition system are often used to obtain location information. Our laptops, phones, and other wearable devices, including cars and other vehicles, collect information about the location of different points. That your location and the entire route can be determined quite accurately, as well as the schedule of your movements. In addition, your routes and actions are tracked with the recognition cameras. This is serious, isn't it? Why all these companies need such detailed information about you? And doesn't it seem like big subservient territory? Don't think that you, yes, you, don't interest them. This allows to keep us like slaves on a short leash with a lot of addictions we cannot refuse because they became firmly ingrained in our habit. And it allows to promote their ideas in our heads by passing logic and reason. Of course, all activity about the user in the network is also collected. Special governmental and non-governmental programs collect all visited sites, forums, searches, social networks in almost all countries of the world. Programs automatically analyze a user profile, determine his true data, and collect all information about him, including analyzing messages in social networks and queries in search engines. This data is viewed, analyzed, and based on it, a portrait and a social rating are created. Browser history, interests, and preferences are always saved. Devices synchronized, and we give all our data to other people's servers. We are asked to go through endless authentications, identity verifications, send photos, take tests, and choose the right answer in order to make life difficult for us and pretend that this is a care about us. And then we additionally post our life on social networks, giving that information to everyone, showing our values and priorities, and immensely prouding of life we have, wanting attention, recognition, and self-esteem. All of this is saved, listened, shooted, analyzed, and after this we are guided, routed in the right direction with dozens of ways and methods and artificially limited so that we don't even understand it. And all of this is always stored on someone's servers, even if we delete all messages from conversation. There is no need in servers only if we keep all messages on our devices. And in this case, we would receive messages only when both people are online. But social networks work in a different way. And land and buildings cost money. Data centers and servers cost money. Uninterruptible power supplies, cooling, and electricity cost money. And that is trillions of dollars a month. Nothing is free, and there is no philanthropist in the world who would give trillions of dollars a month for us to look pictures on the internet. These philanthropists always have access to our data because they own this data and they own these servers, and they can do everything with our data and our lives. Everyone knows about it, but people pretend it doesn't concern them. In real life, it was faced by people who were detained in illegal actions or allegedly illegal actions. These cases are hushed up and not disclosed. Also, population of those countries face it in real life, where protests actively taking place, and where authorities call themselves democratic but in fact despotic. And still, after protests subside, or a person moves to another country, after 6 years he or she forgets about what happened. Based on psychological data, 3 years is enough for a person to completely forget about injustice, pain, and desire to change something. And even now, 99% of people who faced it will listen to me and dismiss me like an annoying fly and continue to sit on Instagram, watch theories, do very important things, and live for themselves. You may argue that you have nothing to hide. Really, you have nothing to hide. Someone gossips about colleagues and writes nasty things about the boss. Someone insults friends behind their backs. Someone cheats on a loved one out of spite in a drunken state. Someone takes illegal drugs. Someone has a child from another person. Someone was forced to sleep with the boss under threat and blackmail. Someone always in a restaurant takes toilet paper with them. Someone accepts gifts from business partners by stealth. Someone likes to sniff dirty socks. Someone has left the country because he or she is considered a criminal there, even if it is not true. And he has nothing to hide until intelligence agencies of his country are interested in him. And there is no guarantee that the laws of other countries will help him. Someone has achieved everything on his own and at the same time likes to sleep with many different people. These two facts don't have correlation or logic, but if this becomes public, the person will be stigmatized for life and his efforts will be discounted in an instant, because people would think that he achieved everything through the bed. People can create anything out of nothing because they are bored, jealous of you, hate you, or like gossips. It is fine if your data is collected by liberal organizations, but these could be companies who collect data for coercion and blackmail to hold on to power, and I don't mean only private organizations. And if attackers gain access to all your data that has been collected, then they get full access to your digital identity. And they can use it for bank loans, thefts, falsification of evidence, and communication with other people using your face, accounts, reputation, and full imitation of your identity in the physical world. Restoring justice can take years, and you will be lucky if after wasted years, ruined career and social connections, and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, you manage to prove your innocence, and if by that time you won't end up in jail because your identity was used illegal. Can't you think of a single case of identity theft, credit spoofing or borrowing, unwarranted invasion of the privacy of both public and non-public people, industrial espionage and trade wars? Even I, an ordinary person, had a situation when a person forged my signature to renew the contract. Few months later, I accidentally received an electronic copy of this document. I didn't remember that I had signed this agreement, so I looked at my schedule to see what I did that day a few months ago. I was too kind to go to forensics to establish signature forgery. At that time, I regretted the future life of this man and his children. But perhaps it was worth protecting myself and acting according to the law. What if your data end up with stalkers or mentally ill people? What if these people will harass you for their own interests and violate your personal space and peace of mind just because they want it? What if you cannot hide from them in another country? because the world is actually not that big, and it is not difficult to find a phone number, residential address by name and surname and go there. And what if these people in addition have power and resources or are on governmental positions? Perhaps even with money you won't be able to provide yourself with legal protection and physical security. If knowledge of your personality is used by mentally ill people, then you won't be able to defend yourself against it, and such people will do anything to achieve their goals. They will destroy your social connections, your career, force you to move from place to place, hide from cameras, look for other routes, change phones, mails, accounts, and even move to another country or continent. And I know this from my own experience because I had to go through this and change country of residence twice. Such people can be your ex, jealous partners, relatives who know what life you should live, the boss who revealed confidential data to you, someone's jealous wife or husband, or even a person from police you asked for help, and then he has even more authority to get you to him. Or it could be any stranger on the street who has mental health problems and you remind him of sister or brother or ex-lover and so on. And these are not Hollywood stories, because Hollywood stories are based on real events. And in your environment there has never been such a case in your entire life, because these cases are not made public. Authorities doesn't want people to panic or to cancel any laws. And also they need to justify actions of certain influential people, companies, police and law enforcement agencies. In addition, companies have hundreds of lawyers who the average person can do nothing against and can prove nothing. In addition, many people remain silent for fear of being judged by society or even their families and best friends, even if they are right. They are afraid of losing their careers or even going to jail because they will be threatened if they tell something. And I am sure that when such a person appears in your life, then most likely you will not support him and you will say that the person is to blame himself. And best of all, you will pretend that you don't see and hear anything and perhaps entertain yourself with gossip for a few days. And you will not stand up for this person because now it is cool to be strong, independent and private. It is cool not to support the victim but to protect only yourself. Such model of behavior is justified with such phrases as living for myself, taking care of myself, my own choice, positive thinking, and other nonsense in order for you to remain limited, helpless, and lonely. This is ridiculous to hear because the one nature gave the right to choose and the ability to create remains a capricious child all his life, preferring to surround himself with fantasies and embody his wants. And in this case, you remain in the frames of society and you are supported by society. And you don't need to prove anything to anyone, have your own opinion, and prove the lack of logic. How many of you will really lend a helping hand to someone who needs it? How many of you will really think about another person's problem? Which of you would really give someone something of your own, what you need, and not say that you would really like to help, but unfortunately you just don't have a possibility and you're so sorry? Sometimes some people have very simple, primitive thoughts in their heads because they cannot see beyond their noses. They live in a vacuum bubble and believe everything they are told, not paying attention on the really important things and the existence of obvious facts. Our lives are so clogged with social networks, advertising and entertainment that a person doesn't face the real problems that occur in the world, or doesn't notice that he has encountered them. And if you prefer to live with your eyes closed, it doesn't mean that they don't exist. They occur around each of you every day. Someone violates your rights and you don't even know about it, or you don't know what can be done about it, or you can do nothing. At my first job, my manager refused to speak to me because I asked uncomfortable questions and wanted to know the truth. Once he said that the next time he would speak to me at least 6 months later, because I was too active and direct. Is it normal? Also, there I was repeatedly harassed by colleagues, including lawyers, and at the age of 19 I didn't even know what it was, except that it was very unpleasant for me. Nobody told me about corporate rules and the employee protection from harassment, and I didn't know about it until I moved to the next job. And once I had a case when my colleague came to visit me for 2 hours because I was sick, and the next day half the department were gossiping that we were sleeping, and I didn't know what I could do about it. I was a naive girl, but there are a lot of such people in the world who don't know what to expect from life, because there are a lot of overconfident, arrogant people who believe that they can do everything, who consider that it is normal to go over people's heads, blackmail and humiliate. That is why it is so important to be able to protect yourself, including the network security, because information about your entire life is stored there, and no one can protect you except yourself, despite the dubious attempts of companies that in fact protect only themselves. And the reason of personal data collection is not a prevention measure in order for you personally don't turn out to be a dangerous element of society. The reason of monitoring your actions is having a tool to put you in fictitious frameworks, limit you in receiving information, create leverage by having information that is critical for you, manipulate you, deprive you of your own opinion, guide you in the right direction, for you to be a useful working tool and a cog in the system. In addition to the fact that your personal data and your personal life is the property of states and corporations, it can also become the property of third parties if information about you falls in the hands of intruders. Servers with information, data centers, websites, social networks can be hacked and data can be stolen or sold. It happens every day. And most likely, companies and corporations exchange your data and sell it to each other. All of us know about it, but of course, no one talks about it. And interested parties try to hide attempts to reveal this truth. And since the modern world has various ways to hack phones, laptops, accounts, and steal information for profit or manipulation, I will tell you a few facts that will help you to protect yourself. But they work in a combination only. First point, choose open source software, because proprietary operation systems and software give us limited functionality, provide us with templates for working and thinking, and collect maximum data about us. Open source software can be paid as well, but their advantages is that their open code can be checked for security and vulnerabilities by many independent people. Proprietary code elements contain vulnerabilities, backdoors, hidden functionality, and so on. Although most common free software also collects some data, we still have much more control. Open systems are much less susceptible to malware threats. They allow you to encrypt the operating system, the hard drive, and all files on the hard drive, without the possibility of decryption by third parties or software manufacturers. So, if they fall into the hands of attackers or governmental bodies, then they won't be able to use this data. The danger is that there is a tendency to add code elements from corporations to open source in order to collect the data. Of course, one line of code is enough to get access to the device, and most of us won't be able to check it. Therefore, I think that very soon some popular open operating systems will be the same spice as well-known proprietary operating systems. Also, when using OpenOS, we have many possibilities to customize our device the way we like. But the most important thing that this is me who choose which programs to install or not, whether I need updates and additions, whether I need mandatory programs that cannot be removed in other software, whether I should register and enter my data when installing OS and using programs. There are common myths about OpenOS. For example, I don't have enough knowledge and experience to install a new OS on my own. Or, it is difficult to use a new OS. Or, if I install a new OS, then I lose my reliable old OS with all my data. But in fact, a few videos on YouTube is enough to get a superficial understanding and install a system on yourself. To understand the basics, it's enough to take a few short courses, which can also be found on YouTube. Devote 30 minutes a day, study and be interested in something new. It is also to have multiple OS on one device as long as you have enough memory. Also, you can have as much OS on external devices as you want, and I can talk about it in a separate video. And then it can drag you out so much that you can study for years and become professional. Open source and free software may not always provide the features you need, but this is rare and applies to paid professional programs. Then you can install another system on the same or on a different disk or on a virtual machine, and the problem is solved. Open source provides millions of opportunities for experimentation, problem solving, and understanding the structure of the world. The second point of information security is strong passwords. All passwords must be unique across systems and accounts. The password must contain at least 20 characters. And these are not animals' names, date of birth, home addresses, and what is easy to guess, having your profiling information. In my case, it is, as usual, strong passwords through a password generator with a length of 64 characters or more, so it even doesn't make sense for anyone to guess, since the process will take years. Thus, the risk of theft of my data, accounts, money, work, ideas is reduced. Be sure to change all passwords regularly every 6 months. This is done to protect against hidden leaks. Any password or part spoken aloud automatically makes you vulnerable. Learn to enter all passwords as quickly as possible and cover up while entering. How to enter 64 characters quickly. Use strong password managers without internet access and store them encrypted. And I hope you understand that for the password managers where you store all your passwords, you need to have strong passwords as well, with special characters, numbers, small and large letters. You need to keep it in head. In addition, don't give your device to anyone and don't enter passwords anywhere other than your device. You see, if you think about information security, then it works in a complex way only, taking into account people around you so that you don't create risks for each other. If you store passwords in a cloud, then the owner always has an access to them. If a company loses your passwords, then you lose them too. If you use company's encryption, then it is likely that they have access to your data even if it's encrypted. In addition, companies may sell information about you, including passwords and encryption keys. These cases happen all over the place. Data can be transferred or revealed legally. This is not to mention that an attacker can access your passwords. Think about how you can make safe not only passwords but also logins. Perhaps they should be different for different sites. Or you shouldn't use your work mail or personal mail, especially if your reputation and personal brand are important for you. The third point is email security. How to choose a secure mail client. First of all, they do not exist, and mail protocols are very open. They were originally developed without this functionality in mind. You can read that there are following criteria for selecting secure mail: absence of automatic email content analytics, possibility to clean mailbox completely, ability to delete sent messages from the second party, and others. But this is nonsense. It is impossible because current laws require user data to be provided and analyzed. By the way, companies by themselves will not lose the opportunity to save user data in their own interests. It is naive to assume that they configure servers so that you could personally delete your emails from them. What can be done to make data transfer more secure? You can choose services with two-factor authentication. But do you think it is really safe to use two-factor authentication through a phone number if it is possible to duplicate your SIM card and receive your messages? What if there are at least 5 more ways to two-factor authentication? Also, for the security of your data, you can encrypt your data or use a digital signature. Find out on the internet what the abbreviations SHA-256, PGP, RCA mean and learn how to use them, because even if your messages are encrypted with the messenger you use, the messenger still has the keys to decrypt them and also can send to third parties. Even if the messenger claims end-to-end encryption, the encryption protocol itself may contain vulnerabilities and your messages will be visible before they are sent. From time to time, delete the mail that is stored in email inbox and empty the trash. If an attacker gains access to your email, then at least valuable data will be deleted. In addition, unsubscribe from unnecessary mailings and spam. So you will not only notice a suspicious message that scammers can send, but also unload your head from unnecessary information. Of course, don't even open suspicious mails and files, or open them in a virtual environment. If you are interested, I can talk about a virtual environment in another video. Another point is browser security. The browser is just a treasury for attackers. Every day, engineers work on critical vulnerabilities in popular browsers to close them, and every day researchers and enthusiasts find more and more new problems. So, before you start using any browser, configure it. You can do simple things that will make your data less vulnerable. Use different search agents, including unpopular ones, as they provide different links and you will get more information. Disable automatic downloads of data so that you don't accidentally download a virus or program if you open a window or press the wrong button. Select the download folder in the settings to save information where it logically should be. Block unreliable sites, ads, pop-up notifications, autoplay of audio and video, collection of data for those sites that don't need your data. Use an encrypted channel for audio and video communications and conferences, though a third party cannot connect to you imperceptibly. If possible, limit the collection of cookies, access to data, audio and telemetry. From time to time, clean history and cookies so that the browser works faster. Do not save passwords in the browser and log out of all accounts every time you finish work, so that in case of access to your laptop, an attacker couldn't gain an access to your cards, accounts and documents. Since it is still possible to access a cabinet or account, or access a SIM card and duplicate it, keep an eye on messages and transactions in mail, messengers and smartphone to notice anything unusual. Also, you should understand that when using the built-in website translator or an online translator, all data, including the link and all text, is sent to the servers of the translator company. Of course, all your social networks and all accounts are also available to server owners. When I need new functionality and I need a new program for it, the first thing I do is checking whether there is a need to download something or whether my laptop already knows how to do it and I just don't know about it. If you still need to download the program, look for the most reliable versions and also read reviews on the internet. Choose from the most reliable sources, preferably from an official source. And when downloading, check if something has downloaded automatically or by default. I like open source operating systems for the possibility of installing programs with a package manager or installing additional libraries with command line without using a browser. You need to watch what to click and not to click automatically without looking, agreeing to all data collection. If possible, verify package integrity and hash files which show that no one hacked the program while it was downloading. You can find out on the internet what hash files are and how to use them when communicating, but just one theory will not protect you. You shall open any files or links in the virtual machine and always check them there. Thus, if files or links contain viruses, or even if they kill the operating system in the virtual machine, they will destroy the virtual environment only. Yes, there are ways to go beyond the virtual environment, but it is much more difficult than just infecting the operating system in it. Another necessary rule for comprehensive data protection is using Virtual Private Network, VPN. VPN should be used regardless of what you do on the internet. How does it work? When you use the internet, you make requests by links and you receive answers. In order for the answer to reach you, everything has addresses. All your devices, including your router. If you know the address, you can track who is interested in what, when and what data is sent. This data is seen by law enforcement, internet service providers and scammers if they intercept this data. They can also determine who exactly received this data because the addresses of your devices are in clear text. And in this way, they can intercept or steal your data, blackmail you, intimidate you, and so on. When using VPN, you have a private network that gives you a secure tunnel internet traffic passes through. Therefore, neither providers nor law enforcement agencies nor intruders will see neither the content of requests, nor the one who makes requests, nor your data you transmit over the network, since all of that is encrypted. Of course, you should choose a reliable VPN. If the product you use is free, then the product is you. However, it doesn't mean that you should send nude photos through a VPN. Such photos are always a risk and the possibility of blackmail by recipients, even if at the moment you trust them. In addition, data can be stolen from the recipient. If you are interested in understanding in more detail what VPN, IP, DNS are, how attackers can use an insecure router or public Wi-Fi for their own purposes, then also write it in the comments. I will talk about it in a separate video. Another important thing to protect your data is backups and duplication of information. Keep backups and copies of most important data on multiple devices and encrypt them. It is clear what a copy is, but what is a backup? This is a backup of valuable files in order to protect yourself from their possible loss in the future. There are three types of backups: full, differential, and incremental backup. In the first case, during every full backup, we copy and save the entire dataset every time. In this case, the recovery is reliable, but copies take up a lot of space and time. In the case of differential backup, the first time we copy and save the entire data, but later we copy and save data with changes since the full backup only. It is much faster and takes up less space. With an incremental backup, the first time we copy and save the entire data, but later we copy and save data with changes since the incremental backup only. In this case, we need even less storage space, but this method is less reliable and it takes longer to restore. In addition, you can set a backup in two ways. Either you make a backup yourself, or the backup runs automatically at a specified time. You can make a backup of certain files, a backup of a specific disk partition, or a backup of the entire system. In the latter case, if you lose your OS or even your device, then you can completely restore your entire system with all settings, programs, and personal preferences. But if you use additional physical media to store backups or another valuable information, then another rule is not to give them to other people, unless you don't mind losing this device and data on it. In addition, don't connect other people's USB flash drives and any other USB devices to your computer. In addition, there is such a thing as a snapshot. This is the entire copy of the system with the preservation of its state and data at a certain point of time. A snapshot is used to roll back the OS to a certain state if something goes wrong or if you know in advance that something might go wrong. For example, you download a program and there is a virus, or you install an update and then you realize that you don't like it. Or you experiment with settings and programs and as a result your system crashes. In this case, you refer to snapshot to return the system to the state when it wasn't broken yet. Data can be additionally stored in a cloud storage, but a cloud storage also has risks and you need to take it into account. I can also talk about it in the next video about information security. Despite all my caution, I almost lost data several times because, for example, the system can crash, the program can stop responding, a virus can damage data, or you just accidentally delete something or forget to save. And at the same time, the hard disk can accidentally die, the data copy can be made with an error, memory can be full, CPUs may run at 100%, or there can be not enough space in a storage space. Have a file storage system that is clear to you. Save files and documents in different folders with clear names and logic. From time to time, clean up files and documents and read off of what you probably don't need. This applies to all your devices. So, if an attacker gains access to your data, deletions, changes or downloads, then you will understand that something illogical or unknown has happened. It is also preferable to know your hidden files and documents. In order to check flash cards, external media or suspicious files for viruses, you can use virtual machines that I mentioned earlier. And if the file or the USB device is infected or untrusted, then most likely their malware will not reach the main OS. You can also encrypt external media and flash cards as well as folders and documents. And the last thing I would like to say about the protection of personal data is that you need to know the laws of your country, the laws of the country where you are, and international laws. Firstly, you need to know how to protect yourself if your data is in the hands of intruders. And secondly, you can accidentally, without intentions, break the law, but you will still be liable. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. So, all these rules seem very complicated. Installing a new OS, setting encryptions and secure passwords, using VPN, configuring browsers, duplicating information. But once you understand the necessity of it, you will devote several weeks or months studying security, and after that, data protection will become easy and quick and will become part of your life and habit. Search the internet and forum of IT specialists to understand tools that are most reliable to use. I would like you to indicate in the comments what you are interested in, so that I will tell you how certain things work, so you provide yourself with reliable protection. For example, virtual machines, virtual private networks, internet protocols, domain name systems, media access control addresses, router and Wi-Fi, cloud storage, encryption. And it will be relevant and valuable information because after my work with engineers, I have learned a lot and take care of my protection. But it all takes a huge amount of time because for me it's a hobby, not a main job. And there is one thing that is very important for me, which I devote my time to earn money and buy it. This is a small mini house that will be located on the site. I told in the video number 2 that I need it in order to live there all year round and build a garage. I have already been saving for it, and your active support not only help me to move forward with the project, but also will allow me to find time to tell you about information security. I consider information security a very important aspect of our lives. Friends, I will be extremely grateful for your support, not only in purchasing a house, but also as a gratitude for useful information, but only if you have a desire and a possibility. And I kindly ask you to subscribe to me and put likes, and thanks to you, more people will see this useful information. The last part of the video, I would like to talk about the consumption of information. Safety and purity is not only about our devices, but also about the information we consume. You spent your time watching my videos, and in return got useful knowledge and the desire to study something in more detail. And I hope I made you think what is happening around you. But you can spend your time on useless or harmful things and load your brain with unnecessary information that will lead to negative consequences. In the video about the importance of the work-life balance, I suggested doing an experiment to increase mindfulness. This will be useful for those who haven't done it yet. Follow the link in the corner, join and leave your comment there. The consumption of information can be compared to the consumption of food. I talked about healthy and harmful food in the video about a balanced nutrition. I told there how it is important to understand food impact, to choose what we eat and to digest food. The same goes for information. We are what we eat, and the food for our brains is information. If you constantly fill your brain with information garbage, then your thoughts will consist of garbage. No smart thoughts, no creativity, logical or smart actions, no development, as well as constant stress due to the abundance of useless information. From the other hand, useful information consumed 24 hours, 7 days a week also will be harmful. You won't be able to assimilate it, perceive it. You will start to get confused. And later, you will receive total rejection in studying anything and perceiving new information. One of the things people spend a lot of time on is useless communication. Relationships are always an exchange that both parties need. Relationships are a constant information, analysis, and routing of thoughts in some direction. But people communicate because, for example, they are sad or lonely, or they want to do something out of habit, or they are bored and want to get emotions, or they need to have fun and assert themselves at the exchange of another person, or use in some other way. And this is our time and life. Time flies. We don't have one more life as reserve. However, there is no criteria to determine what type of communication makes sense. Therefore, ask yourself what kind of relationships you want to build and what is their basis. What interests you in people, what knowledge you can get from them, and how you can be useful to them. And how relevant is it to think that you know better than others, gossip, ask indelicate questions, and give unsolicited advice? Advice is generally a subtle thing that people like to give without asking if it is relevant, while getting into someone else's life without real experience and knowledge about someone's life. Perhaps some topics should be closed from discussion, since this can lead to negative consequences if a person listens and does something without thinking and analyzing it. Also, millions of people waste their time on social networks. In the modern world, this is a habitual remedy and the most common way to escape from reality. This is the way to forget about doldrums and the absence of loved ones. This is the way to pretend that you are not sick of work and relatives, and generally to make a born day fly by faster. I have a feeling people don't understand that it is necessary to change a life so that it becomes interesting, and not to waste it on virtual pictures that don't exist for you. Or, with the help of social networks, you can try to get recognition from others, be proud of your average life without answering the question why you are not enough in your life. With the help of social networks, it is easy to wear a mask, to create an image of successful, hedonistic careerist, or an image of graceful, elegant person with a sensitive soul, or an image of a family-loving person, and merge with this image, convincing yourself that you are that person that you imagine. People take an endless number of unnecessary courses from newborn psychologists, dietitians, businessmen, photographers, fitness coaches, who think they are professionals after finishing 3-month courses. And those who take such courses later call themselves experts as well, in order to convince themselves and other people of their success. People sort through the rubble of unnecessary letters at work. They convince themselves in excessive employment, professional indispensability, and chronic fatigue. They absorb tons of meaningless phrases and drink sedatives, instead of understanding what is really important in work, getting rid of rubbish, freeing the brain, and taking care of themselves. People listen to the music 24 hours, 7 days a week, while they eat, go sports, take a shower, walk down the street, work, go in transport, and so on. People read literature without meaning and awareness and forget about these books in a minute. People constantly fill their brains with informational noise and waste. They don't have a single thought of their own. They look at the world with empty eyes. And all of this in order to escape from reality, avoid control in movements, words, and actions, and live with eyes closed without understanding what is happening. We try to avoid things in the background that have been causing conflicts for decades. We fill our head with anything, no matter what it is, afraid to be alone with our emptiness. We spend years in the social networks, adjust and come up with details of the created image. We change appearance and endlessly have fun. But one day the moment will come when you have to look inside yourself and see the truth that all your life there was no trust in anyone. Real relationships were not built. The truth was never told, and there was no attempt to build what we want. But only few people will realize that their lives would be of much greater value to themselves and society if they consciously and intelligently approached what they think, what they do, and what they want. Therefore, it is so important to start thinking what's in our heads, what we want to receive from this world, and most importantly, what we want to give this world in return. And do it right now. But remember that not anyone can be trusted, and do not trust those who promote their highest values to you but hide information from you. Yes, a person can hide important information for privacy or for your own safety because there are a lot of villains in the world. But logic and principles, words and actions of this person must be clear and consistent with each other. because otherwise a person may be trying to use you in his own purposes. Develop logic and critical analysis in order to understand if someone tells you illogical things or replace concepts. It was Valeria, the Off-Road Ranch. Wish you all the best and see you soon.